For 3 days, she translated his words in real time. Her voice, his meaning. No one in the room knew they had ever spoken before.
The first thing they teach you in interpreter training is that you are not present. You are a conduit, a technical instrument like a microphone or a camera that converts sound from one form into another without adding anything of itself. Your opinions do not exist. Your reactions do not exist. You listen, you process, you speak in the voice of the person speaking, and you disappear into the function. I had been a simultaneous interpreter for 9 years. I was good at disappearing. I had developed over 9 years of conferences and diplomatic sessions and high-level negotiations, the specific skill of being in a room without being in it, of processing complex meaning at speed while maintaining a professional blankness that made me, to everyone in the room, effectively invisible. I was invisible at the Meridian Conference for approximately 4 minutes. Then the lead negotiator from the other side stood up, and I understood, in the particular way you understand something that changes the conditions of everything around it, that the next 3 days were going to require a different kind of disappearing than anything I had practiced. The Meridian Conference was a 3-day international trade negotiation, classified at a level that means I can tell you it happened and not much more than that. I was booked as the lead English to Mandarin interpreter for the secondary delegation, which was the role I'd been filling for 6 years with the same organization, and which I knew well enough that the professional preparation was routine. What was not routine was the name on the briefing sheet for the opposing lead negotiator, Elias Voss. I had read the name 3 times in my hotel room the night before the conference began. With the specific quality of attention you give to something, you need to be sure you've read correctly before you decide what to do with it. I had met Elias Voss 7 years ago at a conference not unlike this one, in a city I no longer visited. We had been in the same building for 4 days, different delegations, different roles, the occasional crossing of paths in corridors and at breaks. And then, on the 3rd evening, at the function that ended the conference, in the way of things that happen at the end of long professional events, when people have been in close proximity for days and the structure has relaxed, we had talked for 3 hours, and then another hour, and then another after that, and by the end of the evening, I had understood that I was in a conversation I did not want to end, and with a person I did not want to leave the room. What we had talked about I remembered precisely, which was unusual for a conversation 7 years past. His work, which was this kind of work, high-level negotiation, the specific architecture of international agreements, and why he'd found his way to it. My work, which was interpretation, and the particular experience of spending years speaking in other people's voices. The city we were in, which was neither of our cities, which gave the conversation a temporary, safe space quality, as though what happened in it didn't need to fit anywhere permanent. What we both read, what we both thought about at strange hours, the specific shape of the future we each imagined, which were different in their forms and similar in their texture, which I had noted and found interesting. We exchanged numbers at the door when the function ended. We said we'd be in touch. I moved to a different city 3 weeks later for a contract that became a career. And in the chaos of the move and the new work and the particular way that new circumstances rewrite the emotional landscape of what you were before them, I had let the connection lapse. Not deliberately, not with intention. The way things lapse when you are 28 and building something urgent, and the thing you might have had exists only in the form of an evening that ended before it began. I had thought about Elias Voss perhaps a dozen times over 7 years, always with the specific texture of unfinished things. Not regret exactly, more like a sentence that ended before the period. And now his name was on the briefing sheet, and in 11 hours I was going to be in a room with him, invisible, translating his words in my voice. I put the briefing sheet down. I looked at the ceiling of my hotel room for a while. Then I ordered room service and went through the technical preparation and told myself, with the professional discipline of 9 years, that I was a conduit, a microphone, an instrument. I was not particularly convincing. I turned off the light at midnight. I lay in the dark thinking about the function 7 years ago and what I would have done differently if I'd known that the new city would become permanent. And whether differently is even the right word, because the new city had been the right choice. It had become my career, my home, the life I'd built, and I couldn't regret it. I just also couldn't quite resolve it. The way you can't resolve an equation where both things are true simultaneously and the maths that would make sense of them hasn't been invented yet. At 1 a.m, I decided I would be professional. At 1:15, I decided that professional was the only viable option. At 1:30, I fell asleep. He walked in 4 minutes after the session began. The reason he was late, I learned later from someone else on my delegation, was a scheduling conflict with a call that had overrun. At the time, in the room, all I knew was that the doors opened and Elias Voss came in, and I was in the interpreter's booth, behind glass, and he could not see me. And for a moment, that felt like much longer than a moment, I watched him cross the room and take his seat and open his folder. He looked older, obviously, 7 years, but in the specific way of someone who had been doing serious work, and it showed in the set of the face, the quality of the attention, the way he settled into the room. He did not scan it the way some people do, asserting presence, checking who was watching. He sat down and opened his folder and read, for 2 minutes, before the session chair called the room to order, with the complete focus of someone who uses every available minute. I knew this about him from the evening 7 years ago. He had been the same then, fully present in whatever he was in, not performing the being present, but simply in it. The session chair called the room to order. The preliminary statements began. I put on my headset and found the channel and waited. When Elias spoke, it was in German. His Mandarin was apparently functional, but not sufficient for the precision the negotiation required, which was why the interpreter arrangement existed. He spoke in German, and I rendered him in Mandarin, in real time, with the 3 to 5 second lag that simultaneous interpretation requires. And I heard his voice through my headset, and I spoke his words in my own voice. And it was the strangest professional experience of my career, and also, in a way I was not prepared for, something else entirely. His voice was the same. That was the first thing. After 7 years, across a conference table in a different country, through a headset in a glass booth, his voice was exactly as I remembered it. The specific quality of it, the pace, the way he built a sentence from the ground up, placing each element before moving to the next. I had remembered this about him. I had not known I remembered it until it was in my ear again. I translated his opening statement. I translated his response to the first question from the opposing side. I translated his clarification of a point about the secondary clauses of the proposed framework, which was technically complex and required close attention that I was grateful for because close attention to the technical content was the only thing keeping me from the other kind of attention, which was the kind I was not supposed to be paying. The first session ran for 2 hours. At the break, I sat in the booth and drank water and did not move for 10 minutes. My colleague, the interpreter who rotated with me through the longer sessions, said I seemed distracted and asked if I was all right. I said I was fine. I was, professionally. I was in the booth and doing the job, and the job was being done correctly. I was not, in any other sense, fine. At the break, I sat in the booth and drank water and did not move for 10 minutes. The second session was harder than the first because I was no longer surprised. In the first session, the surprise had been its own kind of protection. The shock of the situation had kept me at a distance from it, processing it as information rather than experience. By the second session, an hour after the first, the situation was familiar and the distance was smaller. He argued well, That was the thing I hadn't anticipated having to process. How good he was at this, how precise, how he understood where the pressure points of the negotiation were and applied pressure at exactly the right moments and none of the wrong ones. He was not aggressive. He was specific, which is more effective than aggressive in high-level negotiations. And I translated his specificity in my voice, and the words came out of me in Mandarin, and they were his words, but they were in my register. And there was something about this, something I couldn't name precisely, that felt more intimate than any conversation I'd had in years. The interpreter disappears. That's the training. You give your voice to someone else, and you are not present. I was very present. There was a moment in the morning session, a technical exchange about framework timelines, dense and specific, where he was building an argument across several clauses, and I was in the 3-second lag, processing and rendering, and I felt the sentence arrive in the exact shape I'd anticipated before he finished it. I had predicted the structure of his thought from the way it began. That had never happened to me with a speaker in session 1 of a conference. It usually took days of immersion. I noted this and said nothing about it because there was no one to say it to, and because saying it to myself was already more than I intended. The afternoon session covered the detailed framework of the proposed agreement, which was technically the most complex material of the conference and required my complete professional attention in a way that I was deeply grateful for. For 3 hours, I was a conduit. I was an instrument. I was present only as a function. At the afternoon break, I went to the bathroom at the end of the corridor, which required passing through the main conference area, and he was standing near the window with a coffee, and I almost walked past without looking, and then I did look, and he looked back, and there was a pause of perhaps 2 seconds in which I thought, he recognizes me. He did not indicate that he recognized me. He looked back at his coffee, and I walked to the bathroom and stood at the sink for a while with the water running. When I came back through the conference area, he was talking to someone from his delegation and didn't look up. I thought about this for the rest of the afternoon session, parsing it in the gaps between clauses, which is the kind of cognitive multitasking that simultaneous interpretation requires, and which I was very grateful for, because the gaps between clauses were, today, the only time I wasn't thinking about it. That evening, I sat in my hotel room with the briefing materials for day 2 and went through them with thorough professional attention, and also sat with the fact of 2 seconds of eye contact in a conference corridor and what it did and didn't mean. And I concluded that I was not going to resolve this by sitting in a hotel room, and I went to sleep. The second day was a long session with a working lunch that meant the interpreters rotated through without a proper break, which was demanding in the way I was used to demanding, and which I navigated on professional autopilot, while the other part of my attention, the part I was trying very hard not to give bandwidth to, observed and processed. I noticed across the day that he glanced at the interpretation booth twice. Not often, not pointedly, the kind of glance that is calibrating something. I noticed because I was watching for it, which I was not supposed to be doing, which was itself information I was trying not to act on. By the afternoon break, I had been a professional instrument for 11 consecutive hours of the conference, and I was tired in the specific way that simultaneous interpretation makes you tired, which is a cognitive exhaustion rather than a physical one. And I sat in the booth with my headset off and drank water and thought with some clarity about the fact that the thing I had been trained to do, disappear, was, in this particular room with this particular speaker, essentially impossible. Not because I wasn't trying, because the disappearing was the problem. I had been disappearing in one way or another for 7 years. And the specific form that disappearing had taken was not sending a phone number to a person I had spent 3 hours talking to at the end of a conference in a city I no longer visited. And the conference was now replaying itself, very precisely, and I was in a glass booth translating the voice I hadn't sent the number to, and the irony of this was not lost on me. The evening function was optional. I went because I had attended every optional function at every conference in 9 years, and absence would have required an explanation. I stood near the edge of the room with a drink and talked to a colleague from the morning session about a technical point in the afternoon's material, and watched the room in the way interpreters do at functions, always slightly outside the social geometry, not quite participants, available but not expected. He found me at 40 minutes in. I knew he was moving in my direction before he arrived, the way you know when a room has reoriented slightly around a particular vector. He came to stand near me, not directly to me, to a position adjacent that allowed the approach to be casual rather than deliberate, and I recognized this as the same quality of movement I'd noticed 7 years ago, the way he never pushed the direction of things but arrived at them through adjacency, as though whatever happened naturally and he had simply been nearby. "You're the English Mandarin interpreter," he said. "In English, not German." "Yes. You've been doing it well, I can tell from the responses." "Thank you." A pause. The room moved around us. Conversations, the clink of glasses, someone making a joke near the door. "I wasn't sure it was you," he said. "At the break, when I saw you in the corridor, I wasn't certain. And now?" He looked at me. "Now I'm certain." I held my drink with both hands, which was not a graceful thing to do, that gave me something to occupy my hands with. "It was a long time ago," I said. 7 years. "Yes." "You moved," he said, not as an accusation, as the fact it was. "I moved, a contract, it became permanent." "You didn't," he stopped, started again. "I called the number you gave me, about 3 weeks after. It wasn't in service." I felt something shift in my chest. "I got a new number with the new city. I should have sent the new one." "Yes." A pause. "You should have." I looked at him. There was no recrimination in how he said it, just the plainness of a true statement, the same quality I'd been translating for 2 days. He was someone who said exactly what was accurate without ornamenting it. "I thought about sending it," I said, "for a while." "What stopped you?" "I was building something new," I said. "And the new thing and the old thing I didn't know how to hold both of them at the same time. And then enough time had passed that it felt complicated to start." "Complicated how?" "I would have had to explain why I hadn't called sooner." "That's what I was asking you to explain," he said. "I wasn't asking for perfection. I was asking for the call." I looked at him. "I know." He was quiet for a moment, then, more quietly, "What was the evening like?" he said. "For you, the one at the end of the conference." "What do you mean?" "I mean, was it the same for you as it was for me? Or was I reading something that wasn't there?" I thought about being honest, which was what the question deserved, and about being careful, which was what the next day of interpreting required, and about the fact that I had spent 2 days in a glass booth speaking his words in my voice, which felt like it had already settled something about honesty. "It was the same," I said. "It was exactly the same. I just didn't know what to do with it." He was quiet for a moment that was longer than a comfortable pause and shorter than something else. "And now?" he said. "Now we have 1 more day of negotiation, and I am your interpreter," I said. "And that requires I need to be able to do the job." "I know. So whatever this is, I know," he said again. 1 more day. I'm not asking you to do anything with it. I just wanted to know if I'd been wrong." "You hadn't been wrong." "Okay." "Elias?" "Yes?" "I'm sorry. About the number. About not sending it." He looked at me for a moment. "I know," he said, for the 3rd time, and the 3rd time it meant something different from the first 2. "I believe you." He went back into the room. I stayed at the edge for a while longer and thought about simultaneous interpretation and the specific discipline of being a conduit, of disappearing into the function, of speaking another person's words in your own voice as though they were yours. I thought about how I had been doing this, in one form or another, for 7 years, carrying something in the voice of professional competence and personal busyness, and the accumulated weight of a new city and a new life, and never quite speaking it in my own voice because there had been no one to speak it to. I went back to my hotel room and sat with that for a while. The third day was the most technically demanding of the conference, the session where the actual terms were being finalized, and it required everything I had, which I was grateful for because having everything required by the work left nothing available for the other thing. And the other thing was present that day in the booth with me, not as a distraction, but as a kind of weather, something in the background of everything. He was at his best on the third day, precise, careful, with the quality of someone who had prepared thoroughly and was now executing with the ease of real expertise. I translated him for 6 hours, and by the end of it, I understood something I hadn't understood in the previous 2 days, which was that translating someone carefully and attentively over a long time is a form of knowing them that is different from most other forms. Not intimate in the usual sense, but close. You get inside the rhythm of how they think. You anticipate the direction of a sentence before it arrives. You know from the way they begin where they are going to end. There was a moment in the afternoon session, in the middle of a long sequence about enforcement mechanisms, where I finished a clause in Mandarin and felt, before he had completed the next sentence in German, that I knew exactly what it was going to be. Not the specific words, the logic, the movement of the thought. And when the sentence arrived, it was precisely what I had anticipated, and there was a brief, strange quality to that moment, of two people thinking in step without having arranged it. I noted this and kept working. I knew, by the third day, the specific architecture of how Elias Voss thought. It was not a small thing. The final session ended at 6. The delegation dinners were that evening, separately, each side with their own organization, the conference dinner the following morning as a formality. I went to the delegation dinner and participated fully, and came back to the hotel at 10 and sat in the chair by the window and looked at the city outside and thought about what happened next. What happened next was that I thought about the function 7 years ago, which I had been thinking about intermittently for 3 days, and about the number I hadn't sent, and about the fact that for 3 days I had been speaking this person's words in my own voice for 6 hours a day, which was, I thought, a strange form of reunion. Not the one either of us would have chosen, but not nothing. And then there was a knock at the door at 10:30. I opened it. "I'm not asking you anything," he said in the doorway. "I just wanted to say. The last 3 days, whatever the professional arrangement was, I was aware of you, the whole time, and I didn't want to leave tomorrow without saying that." I looked at him. He was in the doorway with the hallway light behind him, and he looked tired. The specific tiredness of 3 days at full professional capacity. And there was something about that, about the off version of him, saying the thing plainly without ornamenting it, that was exactly the same as the version I'd met 7 years ago at the end of a conference when the structure had finally dissolved. "Come in," I said. "I'll make tea." He came in. I made tea. We sat at the small table by the window, and the city was outside, lit and moving in the way of cities at 11 at night. And the conference was over, and the professional arrangement was done, and we talked for 3 hours the way we had talked 7 years ago, which is to say, easily, not tentatively, not with the specific care of two people on unfamiliar ground, but with the ease of a conversation resuming rather than beginning. The 7 years had not erased the frequency we'd found. They had just paused it, Here is what I want to say about simultaneous interpretation and about what it means to speak someone else's words in your own voice. The training says you disappear. The training says you are a conduit, a technical instrument, a microphone. And in the professional sense, this is true. Your opinions are irrelevant. Your reactions don't exist. Your function is conversion and nothing else. But here is the thing that 9 years of practice taught me, that the training doesn't say. You cannot speak someone's words carefully, at length, over time, without something of them becoming part of you. Not in a mystical sense, in a practical one. You have been inside the architecture of their thinking. You have felt the weight of their meaning from the inside. You have spoken their sentences in your own voice and felt how they fit. I spent 3 days speaking Elias Voss's words in my voice. By the end of the 3rd day, I understood him in a way that had nothing to do with the conference. And I understood something about myself, which is that I had been trying for 7 years to interpret my own silence, to find the meaning in why I hadn't sent the number, why I'd let it lapse, what it was that I had and didn't name and then left to quietly expire. The meaning was simple, as most meanings are when you finally find the right translation. I was afraid, not of him, of the version of myself that had wanted to stay in that room 7 years ago, that had felt the conversation ending and known already what it would cost to leave, and left anyway because the new city was certain and the feeling was not. I had translated everyone else's words for 9 years with complete fidelity. I had been, in this one thing, a very bad interpreter of my own. He called on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the conference. I answered on the second ring. We talked for 2 hours. He came to my city the following month, and I showed him the parts of it I'd built into something I could call mine. And he was interested in all of it, and I was very aware, walking through the city with him, that this was a thing I hadn't known how to hold alongside the new life when I was 28. It turns out you don't hold them alongside each other. You bring them together. They make more room than you thought. Some things, I've learned, don't expire. They just wait in the language you haven't found yet, until you do.